KTVU is taking part in a coordinated effort this week with 70 other media organizations to report on the state of homelessness in the Bay Area. In San Francisco, a recent survey found that homelessness is the #1 concern among the city's residents.
KTVU's Monty Francis is here now with one of the biggest challenges faced by those trying to solve the problem. Monty.
Well, Ken and Julie, it's one of the most complex challenges in dealing with homelessness, how to help people who are mentally ill who are living on the streets. As you'll see, there are many barriers to getting people the treatment they need. Michael Ornelas has lived with mental illness all of his adult life. Diagnosed with anxiety panic disorder and severe depression as a teenager, the 40-year-old reached his lowest point in 2012 after spending 2 years homeless on the streets of San Francisco.
You know, suicidal, and that actually really kind of scared me, actually. Because for the first time in my life, it wasn't just a thought, it was more like, I'm going to do this.
Ornelas checked into a psychiatric hospital, and after 5 days, he says doctors said they were going to release him. He knew that meant he'd be back on the streets.
Because the medication I was on at the time made me really sleepy. I said, so I'm not going to take it, that's why I'm going to end up back in here. And I'm going to be in the same position all over again.
For many who are both homeless and mentally ill, it's a revolving door. The city's homeless survey estimates that more than 1/3 of the city's 6,700 homeless people suffer from psychiatric conditions. Many of those patients visit the Tom Waddell Clinic in the city's Tenderloin district, where Dr. Pamela Swedlow treats homeless people with a wide range of mental issues, from psychotic disorders such as schizophrenia to depression and emotional trauma.
Mental illness, different from any other kind of illness, it's the illness itself that prevents people or can prevent people from knowing that if they have something that could benefit from help and treatment and then doing something about it.
Dr. Swedlow says many times the most she can do is make a connection with a mentally ill patient, hoping they decide on their own to receive treatment.
If people just don't want to take medication, then it's a matter of time and working with someone and trying to convince them that it's really worth a try.
Ann Fisher at the National Alliance on Mental Illness says a sea change happened in California in the late 1960s when the state closed more than half of its psychiatric hospitals, and Governor Ronald Reagan signed a law preventing the mentally ill from being forced into treatment, except in the most extreme circumstances.
People were released from hospitals without proper supports in the community and often decompensated, and then when you had new populations spring up who needed long-term care, maybe in a hospital setting, those beds were no longer available.
There are some new attempts to get people with the most severe cases of mental illness into treatment. Late last year, Laura's Law went into effect in San Francisco, named for Laura Wilcox, a 19-year-old from Nevada County killed by a mentally ill man.
What it does is allows family members, loved ones, people in the community that if they know someone with a mental illness to petition the court to bring that person in front of a judge to compel treatment.
But even with Laura's Law, ultimately a patient can refuse treatment. And that's part of the problem, says former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown.
The standard now is they must either be danger to themselves or danger to other people. Otherwise, you can't do anything about it. We need to change that law and make it more appropriate for the circumstances of individuals who will ultimately thank you for having been of assistance.
Michael Ornelas says his breakthrough came when he finally realized he needed help, and a case manager helped him get into a program.
Pain, misery, loneliness, not having anything. That's what broke through, is my mind opened up.
Once off the streets and into treatment and back on medication, his life changed dramatically.
Today I don't live in an institution. I have an apartment down in Millbrae with my fiance.
Ornelas now mentors psychiatric patients at San Francisco General Hospital.
We feel like we're being judged left and right, and there's so much stigma around mental illness, right? So, you know, when we can open up a space for someone and there's no judgment there, it's something that I thought I wish I had, because, you know, I didn't have that.
Speaking from experience, he hopes his story will help others follow in his footsteps. Well, Ken and Julie, tracking the number of homeless youth in the Bay Area is not a simple task. The first step is to determine how to define youth homelessness. And for our purposes, we're defining it as a young person who doesn't have a stable housing or a regular place to sleep from night to night. The face of homelessness doesn't always reveal itself in expected ways, in stereotypes or in tent cities. Sometimes it's invisible to most of us.
I've lived in a hotel, I've lived in a car before, and I've been homeless. And just moving around that much also makes me feel homeless because it's not like I have a house to go to that really is called mine.
Austin Parrish is 15 years old, clean-cut and polite. He says he's been homeless for most of his young life.
Having a home would mean that I feel like I have stability. I feel like I belong somewhere with a family. And being homeless means that I've just been going around.
Since his parents' divorce when he was 8 years old, Austin says he's lost count of how many times he's moved. He says addiction kept his mother from providing a stable home, and his father worked as a truck driver and was rarely around.
I kind of got used to it, but I mean, I would like to have a stable home. I've always wanted to. It just never happened. It's very unpleasant. It just makes me feel really bad. It makes me feel unconfident, and when I go to school, I see all these other kids with good lives, and it makes me feel really bad.
The most recent homeless survey found there are about 1,500 young people in San Francisco who are either in shelters, living on the streets, or like Austin, who are considered unaccompanied children under the age of 18, living without a parent or guardian.
No one really pays attention to the fact that they may have a roof, but they do not have a home. And
Terry Delane is the principal of a charter school on Treasure Island called Life Learning Academy that deals with at-risk youth.
Unstable housing is a #1 predictor of kids that can end up in the juvenile justice system.
Young people between the ages of 16 and 24 are one of the most vulnerable groups when it comes to homelessness because they're transitioning out of public systems such as foster care. Homeless youth are also 87% more likely to stop going to school.
Homelessness is not having a place to live or not having a stable place to live, moving from place to place all the time, worrying about staying clean and things, worrying about eating and things in that sort.
16-year-old Michael Matlock entered the foster care system when he was 11. Since then, he's struggled to find a stable home, living with relatives and back to foster homes several times.
My mom, she's disabled, so it's hard for her to take care of me. And then my dad was in jail at the time. It was pretty hard because it's a lot on your mind. It's stressful. And you got to worry about doing good. And if you don't want people to know, you got to worry about them not knowing certain things.
Even though he knows he can't live with his parents, being away from his family has been hard.
When you wake up and don't feel the same love and affection that you feel in somebody else's house, it's not something that you will want to feel.
Both Austin and Michael are now students at Terry Delane's charter school, among a group of about 20 students at Life Learning Academy, who Delane says don't have stable housing. It's why the school is raising money to build a dormitory and to become a boarding school.
We're going to build something for these kids because we see it every day. If you don't see it, it doesn't exist.
The school has given both boys a new sense of hope for themselves and their futures.
To just grow up and have my kids not live the life that I lived as a child so that they could have a stable home.
15-year-old Austin also has something he wants the rest of us to understand.
There are children that go through things, and that there's homeless children and not just homeless adults, but that children should be helped. Children should be focused on so that they don't become homeless adults.
All this week, KTVU has been taking part in a coordinated media effort to report on the state of homelessness in the Bay Area.
And tonight we look at how San Francisco's mayor's office and others are trying to combat the problem in one of the most expensive housing markets in the nation. KTVU's Monty Francis is here now with our report. Monty.
Well, Ken and Julie, there appears to be a consensus among many working on this problem that a housing-first approach is the best way to combat homelessness. That is, simply get people off the streets and into housing and then get them the services that they need. But as we found out, that's easier said than done. Elaine Buchanan spent more than 10 years homeless on the streets of San Francisco. She lost her job, and when her daughter was killed in a domestic dispute, she lost all hope.
I was actually wanting to commit suicide because I didn't understand my pain.
She became addicted to alcohol and drugs and spent years on a waiting list at Glide Memorial Church for one of the apartments the church provides for the chronically homeless. Just 7 months ago, the 62-year-old finally got the news she'd been praying for.
I was so relieved. I'm sorry. The simple fact that I know I'm keyed in, and I don't have to worry about somebody coming in on me, raping me again. I've been raped more than once.
Buchanan says after spending so many years on the streets, having a permanent place to live helped her get sober and off of drugs.
I don't have a desire to drink. I don't have a desire. I see the crack coming up when I walk down the streets. I see the crack, people smoking it. It don't bother me.
Reverend Cecil Williams and his wife, Janice Marikatani, who founded Glide Memorial Church in the heart of the Tenderloin, have been on the front lines in the fight against homelessness for more than 50 years. Marikatani says housing is an important first step, but it doesn't stop there.
A homeless person, when you have them housed, they will not retain their housing if they are not supported, if you don't continue their recovery, if you don't continue to have community meetings, if you don't continue to have medical and mental health care and case management. It's very difficult.
Marikatani says Glide has a range of programs for the homeless because everyone's needs are different, from the drug addicted to the mentally ill, to the elderly, to members of the LGBT community.
The people who are homeless are perceived as that's their choice in life, that's their way of life, and that's not. So many people are homeless because they've lost their jobs. So many people in San Francisco particularly are newly homeless because of the rents.
The median rent in San Francisco has skyrocketed to $4,500 a month, fueled by demand from high-paid tech workers in the city. Demand has also almost wiped out available space in single-room occupancy hotels, which typically provide rooms to hundreds of homeless people through contracts with the city. But many landlords are now renting those rooms out to paying tenants for more than $1,200 a month. During the last fiscal year, the number of available SROs in San Francisco plunged from 340 to just 76, as more landlords discovered they could cash in. Jennifer Friedenbach with the Coalition on Homelessness says the biggest challenge at hand is the lack of affordable housing in the city.
That's where we've taken a nosedive in San Francisco. That's where our pipeline over the next 6 years just looks frightening. So if we continue on this direction, if we think it's bad now, we're going to see a massive explosion on the numbers of people living on the streets.
Sam Dodge is working long hours to make sure that doesn't happen. As second in command at Mayor Ed Lee's newly formed department to deal with homelessness, which is called the Office of Hope, Dodge is convinced the city could reach the mayor's goal of helping 8,000 people out of homelessness in the next 4 years.
It's a big challenge, but you know, we live in a community, right, that thinks very easily about self-driving cars or stem cell therapies, but you know, this idea that housing cures homelessness and that it's overly daunting to find housing for those that absolutely need it, I think I can reject, and I know that we can do this.
Starting next month, the mayor's Office of Hope will move out of a cramped office in the basement of City Hall and expand from 6 employees to more than 100, with an annual budget of $250 million.
What we haven't had the opportunity to do is to work together as a system and really all row in the same direction and put all our assets towards the same strategies.
Former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown does not share Dodge's optimism. Brown says there's no way the current mayor can accomplish such an ambitious goal.
There clearly is not enough affordable housing. There's not enough available housing. And the process that we go through and the speed with which we engage in, you probably will have expired by the time the unit gets built.
Brown says the number of homeless people in the city has almost doubled since he was mayor because of what he describes as the migration of homeless people to San Francisco.
They are in other locations, and there's no doubt people tell them exactly how much better off you are if you are in need in San Francisco versus some other place. And so they will migrate to San Francisco for that purpose. And we are a very generous city.
But Dodge says the city is gradually finding space, buying up properties and adding rooms where homeless people can live and have peace of mind. It's a peace of mind Elaine Buchanan is feeling for the first time in years.
I almost gave up. But I'm glad I didn't.
Buchanan says her heart is filled with gratitude because she finally has a place to call home.
Because I'm very grateful that I finally stopped running.